Welcome, listeners, to another episode of Pateo Radio, brought to you via findingvoicesradio.com. My name is Johan Oldekamp. I'm the host of this show, and the date of today is June 3, 2015. The guest of this episode lives in Florida, USA, and his name is Mohsen Paul Sarfarazi. Mohsen, please welcome to the show.
Thank you very much, Joanne. And how do you pronounce your name? Johan or Johan? How would you like to be?
I hardly hear any difference. Johan is good for me. And for you, it's Mohsen, I think, eh?
That is correct. It's Mohsen, Mohsen.
Yes.
Paul Sarfarazi, Sarfarazi.
And where is your ethnic origin from? Maybe from your ancestors, but where is the name coming from?
I am originally Persian, sir, and but I left Iran or Persia at the time, and when I was about 17 years old, and I went to England, and then I finished my bachelor's there in structural engineering, and then I came to United States and I did my master's in structural engineering, and continued on to get a PhD in continuum mechanics and materials, and we can talk about that if you're interested. If not, we move on to other subjects.
Well, it's good to know that you have a PhD. That means that you have the qualities and abilities to do research, and I think that's very important in this day and age because there's so much disinformation going on, not in the last place coming from the universities themselves. So, what is your take on this, Mohsen?
I totally agree with you, Johan. I'm going to start calling you Johan if you don't mind. Again, Johan or Johan? Which one?
Some people put the emphasis on the first part of my first name and the others on the second part. So to me, it's both good. But maybe you put Johan. Most people do that.
Okay, my friend. I called you Johan because it's Johann Strauss and all that. I'm familiar with that kind of name.
Yes.
Anyway, I entirely agree with you. I think that there is actually, unfortunately, there's a lot of nonsense going on in this new age of spirituality. And not only that we have some charlatans and people who are just basically milking people for money and cheating them, calling themselves channelers. And I'm not saying everybody is mind you, a charlatan, but there's certainly groups of people who, put these dog and pony shows and take people to trips, and then they have been proven to be charlatans, but still they continue on, and some of them, unfortunately, they're very successful and they're making a lot of money. But it doesn't really matter because I'm not after money. I'm not interested in money. I'm a retired professor. I'm reasonably well off, more well off than I want to be. And so I'm retired, and I retired myself from the university, quite some time ago. And but anyway, there's certainly there has to be people such as us, you and me, and you indicated that you have been in. Of course, you have a good track record in spiritual science, but I'm much more newer to the field as such. But I'm extreme fast learner. It's like exponential the way I always absorb and learn things. But anyway, so there are two aspects of this actually. There is the aspect of bringing the science into spirituality, and that means quantum mechanics, plasma physics, continuum mechanics, material science, all this stuff, and then also, so that would basically what it would do, it would eradicate these charlatans who say things. They quote from old metaphysics stuff, and they say Metatron said this, that said that, Melchizedek said this, you know what I'm saying, Archangel Michael said this, and all that stuff, and they don't understand a damn thing what they're saying. from a scientific point of view. And I can cite many, many examples because I have read a tremendous amount of channels that have come to us. Some of them were legitimate, whether they came from, Palladian, Arcturians, all that, or they came from some archangels. And it's quite obvious they don't know what the hell they're talking about. And I've been to, a couple of, sources, trips, and I have tried to even talk to the person who calls himself channeler, he's the guru, and all this stuff. And you have to chase him down literally the street, trying to talk to him because he runs away because he knows that he's dealing with you. And although mentions, you have a PhD, you can do a lot good, and all this stuff, but at the same time you see the fear that he doesn't want to get into any conversations. And I had to correct him actually several times on his own channels, for example, this particular one, because he couldn't understand that in quantum mechanics it's called Planck's number, or what the word quantum exactly means, or what is Planck's number, which refers to consciousness and all that stuff. So anyway, so from that point of view, then we also have, so doing this, the average man can learn, from a scientist, from somebody who understands. When we're talking about, let's say, light of consciousness, and we're talking about the dissemination of light and such thing as CMEs and solar flares and sun and all this stuff. I mean, somebody needs to have that solar physics understanding, you know what I'm saying? Mm-hmm. Whether it's lasers or solar physics, or it's got anything to do with any of that, area. And, explain things. And when terminologies are used, completely tell them what's a dark spot on the sun, or how is the light coming to us, or plasma physics, or on and on and on. Or if you're talking about consciousness, what do we mean by all these things that allegedly this person has said? Of course, these people steal stuff from all over, right? They steal from scientists, they steal from some channels that I believe some of the channels that they came in, they were legitimate from higher dimensions. Around 2000, they started from probably 2005 or 7, went on to 2013, and they stopped. Okay, all the activities, basically, most of them have stopped. There are few channelers that still channel this and that. Some of them are just misinformation, disinformation, mm-hmm. But they're gone. I mean, you could have had so much channeling from, for example, Melchizedek or Lord Sananda or this or that, and they were, I believe in some of that. But anyway, so that's one aspect, and the other thing is that's teaching basically or blending the scientific understanding of metaphysics principles to the public, to the average people. And the other thing that I like to do is bring the metaphysics to the educated, highly educated PhD, what I'm saying, professors and all this stuff. Although, strictly speaking, I haven't, I could very easily publish in the International Journal of Consciousness or this or that. And maybe I actually like to open some of these journals myself. But anyway, to tell them, hey, metaphysics is not stupid. Metaphysics has a foundation, and there are. So when you come in and model things, and when you come in and talk about things from the fundamentals of the principles of physics and mechanics that is known in 3D, And they can relate to that because they can see how intelligent the stuff is. Your tensor analysis, your mathematics, although I don't try to, at this point I'm not trying to put too much mathematics into it, but sometimes you have to just simply explain to them, hey, you're talking about aura, you're talking about the auric shell. How does this auric shell expands or contracts? And I just ended up actually modeling that, and I haven't actually put it on my anywhere. I did put it on WordPress.com, but it's not even on my. Nobody knows about it unless they're surfing and finding that.
This afternoon I went to your website. Sorry to interrupt you, Mohsen. And on your one of your WordPress websites called Human Physiology and Energetic, there is actually the article you now refer to. At least maybe it's another one, but you described the aura, and I was really impressed by it because you really bridge between the so-called metaphysic understanding of the aura and the hardcore plasma how can I call it, plasma engineering side of it. So it
yes, sir. Yeah, that was one of the papers that actually I think I started really publishing. I went back to spirituality because in 2012 I wrote over 150, maybe 200 papers. Okay, but I gave them. They were on that multidimensional, which is now is multidimensional consciousness.tripod.com. But I had given, I had given some references to one person who, one that I traveled a few times with, and he allegedly channels Metatron, and so I took some of that. And he had got some of that, a lot of stuff from metaphysics, which is well known. You know what I'm saying now? I know that. I mean, I wasn't, I had started studying metaphysics in 2011. So at that time, it just was very, very exciting to me, and I was just I used to have such a frequency that was through the roof. It was like I was up about 20 to 22 hours up at night. I only slept about 2 hours. And so in a period of about, 4 months, I wrote way over 150 papers, okay? But the ones that had references to Metatron and this guy, I wiped them off because he's a crook. Now I know he's a crook, So, and I'm going to be probably republishing it and stuff in a different fashion, but I just wanted to cut my ties with this because he took it into just a PhD such as myself is writing papers and referring to his channels and stuff like this. He was flabbergasted, I think. Okay. Actually, what happened, if you want to know, I don't want to dwell on this, but just very briefly, I was in the 12-12-12. This place called Earthkeeper did, and he's the guy in charge of it. And I was with Graham Hancock and David Childress and those people. And so I gave a talk on multidimensionality, and I wrote a book on multidimensionality. But I also wrote a book quickly on 12-12-12 ascension of Earth, because he had all these scattered things here and there, presumably having come from Metatron. And I felt the planet needs to know these things better. So I basically, saw myself as the so-called prophet or whatever, going to, excuse me, just bear with me. I want to get rid of this AOL because it's gonna, make a noise. Anyway, and I wrote this book, and then after that it became very popular, and then the meeting, people were so overwhelmed. And I'm happy to hear that. And that's why I encouraged him to continue on. There were about 50 people who went to him and said, we want Dr. Sarfarazi as an encore, give another lecture. because I only had like 1 hour, while Graham Hancock, who was his idol, had like three days in a row. He had three, or whatever. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
So people went to him, and then he was reluctant. He was very happy when I gave him the book. He was flabbergasted. You know what I'm saying? Because I signed a copy of the book and I gave it to him. So then after that, next day, another 40, 50 people went to, or 40 people, as I was told, went to him and said, we want Dr. Sarfarazi. We want him at lunchtime. We will go at 10 o'clock at night. We've asked him. He's compliant. He wants to do this. And we like to talk to him because he's just one of us. Because I didn't go out there and play the big expert on anything. I just went there as a very, very, I just knew everything that he had ever done better than he did. Because that's the nature of a person I am, okay?
Okay.
And hundreds and hundreds, maybe thousands of other channels that had come out, within a span of 2 years prior to that I had read. I mean, I used to read about, I don't know, sometimes maybe 50 channels, 100 channels a day, to see what is these people are saying from outer space. And I had seen evidence of misinformation, disinformation, so I understood. I know very well what's going on the planet, believe me, because of that. You know what I'm saying?
Mm-hmm.
Because that's how everything exploded. The advent of internet from 1987, which is the dawn of the harmonic convergence era, and and internet came in just about right after that, and then it exploded or imploded everything on the internet. So anyway, that's how a lot of information is grasped by a lot of people, except misinformation, disinformation confuses people, and if they don't have a scientific background, or they're not resolute in their intent and understanding and discernment, you know what I'm saying? They get confused.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And then they get. I've seen people who got disgusted from this new, and a lot of people are actually cropping up right now, this new age spirituality, because they just don't know what to do with it. Okay, this ascension, this, and this, and this, and there is a very proper way to look at this and absorb everything, and not, get on a bandwagon of hypocrisy on this side or that side or whatever. You know what I'm saying? So anyway, I think these people, giving them the scientific background, hearing from somebody who, I started a new field in the science called micromechanics of fracture. Okay, and by the way, you were talking about those papers. That paper you mentioned, it was a little older one. There is a paper that I just put up that models Auric microfracture, from a continuum point of view. And that's what I was referring to, okay?
Okay.
So if you take a look at that, you'll see that, and there is nobody out there. I started microfracture mechanics. Unfortunately, or fortunately, soon after I retired. I retired myself from universities and research. And there are reasons for that. We can go on talking about all this stuff. But I think there was a purpose that I went to structures. And when I went to structural engineering at the beginning, that was my own physical consciousness pushing me to do that. It was my brain. And then when I did that, it is funny. I'm supposed to be a structural engineer, designing beams and this and that and that. So I liked the mechanics. I liked some of the materials aspect of it, but I was haunted by the theory of vibration mechanics.
Mm-hmm.
Of course, University of Sussex in England, being a sister university of Cambridge, it was very theoretical, and we had 5 courses in vibrations, which is, I don't think, any civil engineering or any structural even engineering, or even mechanical engineering programs anywhere on the face of the planet have 5 courses. They have 1, maybe 2 at most. And when I came and then started my master's, I already knew a lot of stuff from the undergraduate. Of course, I went to structural engineering. I didn't go to civil engineering. Usually you go to civil engineering and then specialize in structural engineering for your master's and PhD. But there are 4 universities in England that offer the degree of structural engineering. And University of Sussex was the most fundamental, theoretic, abstract form of the subject. In fact, you really got a degree in applied mechanics and sciences, but with an emphasis on structures. You know what I'm saying?
Okay, yes.
So a lot of fluid mechanics, a lot of stuff we studied. But I was haunted, Johan, by this vibration mechanics, and I couldn't understand it. And I just learned that like there was no time. And I was to spend time on that. Then when I went and did my structural engineering, again, I got haunted by structural dynamics. And I got into design of structures for earthquake and wind, and analysis of earthquake and wind structures, to a point that after 60 credit hours of masters, there was nothing on the planet Earth that had anything to do with the structural dynamics that I had not taken it. Whether it was numerical methods, energy methods, mathematical modeling, anything that it was. You know what I'm saying? Experimental aspect of it. And actually, I had a good friend, and he was my professor or mentor at NSF, who died unfortunately, a few years back, and he was my mentor, and he told me, Mohsen, write your PhD in in earthquake and wind engineering, and he was the chairman of the NSF funding group. Okay. So through him, I met all the professors who had anything to do with wind and earthquake engineering, which was a very fresh subject. Okay. Anyway, I did all this stuff. I even wrote 2 finite element programs, Feed and Carve, and I did tremendous amount of work. I was just about this close to getting my PhD, and my knees started knocking. And when that happens, I know it's my higher self. It's just moving in and reminding me of something or telling me to do something. And I left the school. I was already an assistant professor with a master's degree, okay, at George Washington University. I left it. I ended up at University of Illinois, and I got my PhD because told me you got to get into continuum mechanics. I guess at that point I didn't understand it. I just wanted to get to mathematics, tensor analysis, mathematical modeling in an abstract fashion, which is all what I'm doing right now. You know what I'm saying? Mm-hmm. And it is in such a way, Johan, I don't even need a textbook. I can sit in a corner and put me on an island in a corner, and I'll drive the equations for you. In fact, all this stuff that I did and I'm doing, I have not, I don't need to look at anything. These areas, like I said, vibration mechanics first, which is tremendously pertinent to soul vibration and body vibration and consciousness, okay? And it leads into quantum mechanics from continuum mechanics. And then I got into constitutive modeling, which means the understanding the behavior of materials under load. And I did a horrendous, after doing everything, even passing my PhD oral exams, and I was ready to just write my thesis at the University of Illinois, where I got my PhD. And at that time, I became so interested in material science after taking every courses beyond any necessary to get a PhD. And I taught myself everything. One of the things that really, concrete and things like this, those were civil engineering materials, reinforced pre-stressed concrete, all that stuff. Then I got into fiber reinforced composites, resin reinforced composites. Those are all man-made materials. Then I decided I don't want to write my PhD on these things. So I got into crystalline solids. And that demands material science and learning metallurgy and all that. But this stuff is very, very, what is it? It's more qualitative, material science, because you look at things under, the scanner electron microscopy, acoustic emission studies, all this kind of stuff experimentally, characterizing what's happening in the microstructure of the system. My background was in continuum mechanics. I'd registered to get a PhD in continuum mechanics. Continuum mechanics doesn't even deal with these materials other than a specification of a constant such as Young's modulus, Poisson ratio, whatever, and gets into tracing the continuum point by point. Like this point, the material deflects, and this point goes to this point, and let's define a position vector, and then define a strain that the body goes through, and then from strain, let's get stresses, then get to equilibrium, and all this stuff. So basically, you don't have to be a material scientist to be a continuum mechanics person. And that's what it was. You had a department of mechanics, and then you had a department of material science. So I married both together. I had learned the structural engineering. Forget structural engineering. It's gone. I'm into continuum mechanics and materials now. So I married these two because I started modeling the system, okay, knowing everything, the material looks, how it starts damaging, how it starts cracking, micro-cracking, plasticity, deformation beyond elasticity, all this stuff, and then used all the tensorial analysis and mechanics or continuum modeling. So basically I came up with a modeling of polycrystalline solids, okay? I did my thesis on the constitutive modeling of that, which means the behavior of a polycrystalline material under load, but how it develops crack, which was new, how it develops those microfracture. And that was the most important thing. And once it develops microfracture, how it changes the property. Because, see, if you have elastic system, you load them, they go back to their original shape. There is no history. Okay? But if you damage the material, either through some kind of shear localization, deformation, or tensile stresses creating cracks and stuff, the material deteriorates. It's no longer the same thing, So it's prone to failure more and more and more, and it becomes, history dependent. Are you with me? Because when you remove the load, it won't go back to what it was. It's a damaged state now, and all this stuff. Anyway, so I wrote my thesis on that and published 5 papers, which I sent to the International Journal of Engineering Fracture Mechanics, and they got published they got accepted in 1 week. I couldn't believe that. A student without a professor. Okay?
Wow, impressive. Yeah.
Yeah, I didn't have a professor. I went there and I basically bribed a professor in the department who was in reinforced concrete design. He wasn't a theoretician. He wasn't a continuum guy. He was a structural engineer in a department of civil, mechanical, and environmental engineering, which is why I got my PhD from. And I went there and he said, "Mohsen, I don't know what the heck you're talking about." I said, "Please, sir, I need to get my PhD. I'm done. I've got my thesis done." So he said, "Okay, write something for me." I wrote 2 chapters of the thesis. I started writing my thesis, giving it to him. And when he looked at it, he just went, "Wow." He said, "You got to publish these." I said, "These are nothing. These are just going back 200-300 years and telling you about basically constitutive behavior, some material science, this and this." They were very, very authoritative treatment of subject, but there wasn't much new in them. You know what I'm saying? It's the new thing is the way you put things together, you describe, that's new. So I said, sir, these are not my PhD thesis. They're going to be way in the next chapter. I haven't even started the problem. He said, let me send them there. He said, where do I send them? And I said, well, International Journal of Fracture Mechanics is the most prestigious. Harold Leibowitz was the fracture guy, you know what I'm saying? And he was the chief editor and all that stuff. So he sent it there in 1 week. They got published. By the way, I put his name there. It was Dr. S.K. Ghosh, and you would still see in my publications there. Anyway, so after that, then, you know, it created some stuff and problems in the department, which I actually learned a lot about human behavior from all this metaphysics aspects firsthand. Jealousy and competition and anger. Because there was a professor I started my PhD with, and then I decided I don't want to do what he's doing because it's not. I didn't think it was good enough. You know what I'm saying? Mm-hmm. But I never told him that. But I just pulled out, and then he went after me with a vengeance when he saw the papers published. No, he didn't look. He thought he's not going to look good in the department. But anyway, I don't want to go through this. There was a lot of bad energies developed in there, but it was incredible how I think my higher self moved in and took care of me, because with all that, see, imagine how much work I had done, and it could have just fallen apart. However, when the papers got published, the two, and then I published 3 more, and he also transmitted this to the International Journal of Fracture Mechanics. But you know what happened? The other guy, which was a full professor, threatened him, and he was going to be a head of department, threatened this guy that he's never going to be tenured. Okay? So the professor who I started with, who was a wonderful person, without him I could never have got a PhD. Because you can't get a PhD in this country without having an advisor. It's impossible.
Mm-hmm. Yes, they're the same.
So, yeah. So basically what happened was this. He told him, don't you dare saying that. And those papers that were published and accepted, they were all single-authored, and they were the crux of things. It introduced a new area in science called microfracture mechanics, or micromechanics, basically. Because I also dealt with the other aspect, which was plasticity and shear. So it's not microfracture, it's really micromechanics. It's both sides, plasticity versus, you know what I'm saying? Anyway, so there it goes. So he didn't tell me anything, and then finally the and here's the thing that I did. Look, I had nothing to hide, so I asked this professor to be on my thesis. What is it? Defense.
Mm-hmm.
So he put me through 4.5 hours of hell, trying to drop me in a hole, make me look bad, to the extent that his buddy, Professor Wu, bless his soul, he's still alive, Chen Wu, from University of Illinois, who's actually a professor emeritus, got up and said, after 4 hours, got up and said, Mohsen, go sit down. And took the chalk in his hand and told this guy, said, listen, you're now dealing with me, not Mohsen. He's not some student whose future hanging in the balance. You talk to me, so see what you're talking about. Because he's answered everything and more, and there's no question what he has. And later he told me this. He said, initially when I started with him, he had gone to the department chairman, and he said that I'm a genius. He had never seen anything that had come in since 1920s or anything in mechanics. Which, by the way, the head of department, who, and I'm sorry, I'm beginning to sound vain, but these are just true. The reason I'm telling you this, because they teach us a lesson, and the lesson is this egotism, I mean, he showed me the dark sort of humanity, this man. I mean, just move away. Just forget it. Let me graduate. Let me go. What are you doing this? Anyway, Professor Chen Wu did that. And by the way, not only he didn't become a professor, they kicked him out of the university. That's an incredible story. I'm telling you, it's incredible. I go back in there and I say, God, how did I survive this? And how did I? Of course, it disgusted me to a point that I only worked in the field about, I don't know, 5 more years, and then I retired myself because I got disgusted by what's going on with all this, zealousy of publication and getting grants and writing papers that are not worth the toilet paper. You know what I'm saying? And I said, what is...
Sorry to interrupt you. Thank you very much for sharing this, Mohsen. I had a similar experience too, and the guy who was harassing me, he died very young, so somehow...
Yeah, he died young too, by the way.
Okay, yeah.
Well, not that young, in 60-something, but he died, and he died very badly. He was one of the biggest big mouths in the world. I've never seen any, and he was very articulate. That's how he had got himself as a full professor and almost became a department head. You know what I'm saying? But you know how he died? You're not going to believe this, Johan. I just had my children about a week ago, which I went back to the subject of microfracture and revived all this stuff in my head. And one of my sons said, let's look at this guy and see if he's still alive. And we realized that he died, 10 years ago or some more than that. And he died from a disease that he lost his speech.
Oh, he spoke too much in his life, perhaps.
Can you believe this?
Yeah.
I mean, thinking about karma. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
This man was such a big mouth. But the only reason I'm saying this, Jan, this is all done, finished. It really, really tells a lot about our divinity, about afterlife, about spirituality, about all this stuff, karma, and that's why I share this subject, because otherwise, you know what I'm saying? It's actually disgusting.
Yeah, I understand. What I like about your work, what I read about it, is that you apply this micro mechanics to, for instance, the aura. But for the listeners, can you give us a little bit of an explanation what new insights this knowledge brings to us? For instance, does it help to keep our aura intact or make it energetically more stable?
I understand. Okay, the first thing, as I said, the first mission is to bring validity, credibility to metaphysics.
Mm-hmm.
Okay? In fact, this morning I was just reading an article that was written in the 1920s about aura, because it's way pre this new age era, and I don't read anything, Johan, because I don't have time. I write so much, and I don't have time to read. But I came across this for some reason. I got interested in it and started reading, because this guy was a clairvoyant. It could understand colors, and actually looking at a lot of stuff that I've known, but this is from a person who could see aura and is explaining it. Okay, but anyway, going back to your question, is that apart from the fact that it gives them validity, secondly, is that I have described aura in a very, very down-to-earth, understandable thing for a human being, three-dimensional human being, that instead of thinking, woo, etheric, I can't see, it's stealth, and all that, to something that is very, very understandable and sensible. And if I believe even if people concentrate their mind into it, they're going to start seeing their own aura. They're going to see how it emanates from them. And anyway, it is just simply what I'm saying. Aura is a laminated structure. Okay? Mm-hmm. And I know laminates. I studied I studied so much about laminated composite structures, which is, what I'm saying. I'm not saying it's exactly the same thing, but I've looked at all kinds of behavioral laminated structures. Okay? So, and when people say this, understand truly something that's stealth, but yet it is there. I mean, these band of auric layers, each one of them represent an etheric layer, etheric bodies, which are real. You and me know it's real, but I'm presenting it to them so they can see the structure of aura. That's the first. We're talking about the auric skin, the boundary layer between the laminates, which is a double, I'm sure you're familiar with all that, with double shell, lamina with electrical circuits going around, It's something that I don't know if a lot of people have understood it. Even if somebody read a channel from a higher being, I don't know that it exists where to tell you to go and look at the stuff. You know what I'm saying? But even if they've done this, it's hard for them to understand because they don't have the mechanics background. They don't have the engineering background to put it all together. And it's right there. I'm explaining to them. And also the most important thing, one of the things that people don't understand is the subject of basically auric energetic depletion. And they don't understand how it depletes. How can you lose your aura? What is an aura? What is an aura? Aura is a pressurized, plasma of energetic particulate materials. It's liquid light. If you read that one paper that you mentioned, I did talk about plasma and all that kind of stuff. And then what happens is that the aura starts fracturing at its boundary layer when you got a differential pressure. When the pressure inside, the energetic pressure inside and outside are not the same. Now, we know in metaphysics that people have auric, what you call it, auric bleeding or energetic leakage. And we know that when you go, for example, when you are on the plane and you go high up in there, it happens. It gives you a lot of fatigue. NASA's talked about all this stuff a lot. I have another paper that just recently I did and became very popular. But anyway, but also, when you go into nature and you calm down, and what happens, your aura starts equilibrating inside pressure with outside pressure. Okay? How does it do it? How does it really do it? Okay? And I'm saying that cracks are being generated, micro cracks at the boundary layer. They may be those in the etheric fourth dimension, okay? Or just outside the physical body, and you can't see it stealth. Now, some people can see it. And then through that, it depletes energy and it equilibrates inside and outside pressure. And that tells you exactly about the mechanism of auric, basically, what is it? The equilibrating itself. And we know that, you have the Schumann resonance, right? Let's say you're out there with right now it's probably 9-10 hertz at least, Some people say it's about 13 hertz. And then our frequency is going up and up and up, right? So our auric aura is expanding and expanding and expanding. And what's happening is that when you go in the nature, before you go to nature, if you're in the underground in New York City or places like that, you got stress, you got all this stuff, and you've got all this auric, bleeding, so to speak, happening and stuff. Or you have auric pressure anyway. You have auric pressure, right? And then when you go in there, you have 10 hertz in there, you've got 7 hertz inside, or you've got 13 in here and 10 there. I don't, it depends whichever. I didn't address that because I'm not sure what exactly the frequencies are. But the difference between the frequency of in and out creates that differential pressure, and the differential pressure is just like a shell that is under differential pressure. And so what happens is that the auric skin starts stretching. So people understand from mechanics and a concept that actually, if you want to go back, it goes to Poisson effect, which tells you that if you pressurize the system in one direction, it will generate tensile strains from the same pressurizing in transverse direction. So if the auric layer, okay, if the auric skin, you're pressurizing and it's inflating, okay, it will create tensile stresses along, in its shell structure, which cause cracking, micro cracking. And you have micro cracking, the energies they're gonna just deplete. And it equalizes with the outside, with the inside. And after that, there is no differential pressure, and then you're good.
Yes.
So, I'm asking you as an expert in metaphysics, okay, and a person who's also a scientist with a PhD degree and all this stuff, did you ever realistically think about this, what I said to you, how it happens? And I formulate it.
I've never tried to apply, let's say, the laws of physics or mechanics to everything that is metaphysical. But I think you're absolutely right that the principles must be exactly the same, as above, so below. So I really really appreciate your attempt to bridge these two worlds. I bridge it in a more conceptual way. I show that the concepts are exactly the same, but unfortunately, due to René Descartes, universities start to more and more abandon the field of alchemy and metaphysics and everything that is not in the physical realm, which is really a pity, because the scientists from ancient Greece, they were more interested in the world above, because the principles there can be studied by the world here, but their ultimate goal is not to understand this world. Their ultimate goal is to understand the principles of the higher reality, and I think that's the goal of any true scientist. So that's why I'm happy with what you're doing, and grateful for what you're sharing.
Thank you, sir. Now, to just add to your eloquent statement, I want to say that this really applies what I'm doing or what I'm saying, because we know, you and me, we know that a lot of these ethereal bodies, they are within the fourth dimension. They don't reach fifth dimension, okay? In fact, the 7 body layers, you got physical, no matter where you go, they might have called them a little differently, but you got physical, etheric, emotional, or some people call it astral, which is a wrong terminology in my feeling, thought, causal, and then you got the spiritual, and then finally you get to the light crystalline body, which is in the 5th dimension and above. Now, here's what I'm saying. The 6 layers are within 3rd and 4th dimension, okay? One of them is in 3rd, one of them is in between, and 4 others are in the 4th dimension. And we also know, and I definitely believe in this, that the odd dimensions are nothing but the extension of the even dimensions, okay? Did I say that right? No, I should say the reverse. The even dimensions are just the extension of the odd dimension. So 4th dimension is an extension of the third dimension, because we know that our emotional thoughts, causal, all this stuff exists in the 4th dimension. And we have a variety of different literature that talk about this. Arcturians have talked about this, and all this stuff. Now, to add to what you were saying, I want to say the following. The 4th dimension is just the 3rd dimension. It's not any different in physical laws or laws of mechanics or anything of the sort. Only it's just outside our realm of 5 sensory perception. Okay? And there are adept spirituals and metaphysicians who actually easily see in the fourth dimension. They're clairvoyant, they see aura, they see all this stuff, and I believe that exists. I think that is within our genetic structure, although they've cut that off from us, from the average common man, right? So what I'm trying to tell you is that those laws, the way that I've applied it, whether it's Newton's third law or principle of equilibrium or the second, law of inertia, all this stuff, conservation of energy, they all apply. Now, if you go to a distinctly different dimension, then you would expect those laws are going to be different. And I believe fifth dimension is going to be different than third dimension. Now, we know we're going to be crystalline. We're not going to have carbon-based anatomy, physiognomy. We are going to be crystalline. We're going to be somehow translucent. These things were actually given to us, and I believe they are very correct. I don't see anything, any ambiguity in hundreds and hundreds of papers that I have read, not papers, channels, direct quotation, from Palladians, from Arcturians, from even some divine entities. The divine entities get more into the, what I'm saying, nitty-gritty details of spiritual, a little beyond religious. But certainly Arcturians, people like this, they have talked about high-dimensional consciousness that brings in a high-dimensional aspect of understanding physics and mechanics and materials and all this kind of stuff. They haven't explained it. There's no textbook. There's nothing. That's another place that I come handy. Because as soon as they open their mouth or as soon as they write something, I can see whether that is the work of a charlatan or it has a basis based upon the principles of mechanics and physics and all that stuff. And if they make a statement, how exact... Look, the subject of auric bleeding is not new, is it?
No.
I mean, you've known this for ages, right? That's the subject of even auric being different bands of aura and all this stuff is not new, is it?
No, it's known for long. I've seen it in university textbook.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah, but you see what I'm saying? To bring that into a very, very down-to-earth, three-dimensional, physical aspect that we can all understand is what I'm trying to do. And I'm saying, I'm not fantasizing. I have a belief system that the third and fourth dimensional the dimensions of consciousness have the same texture. Okay? There are those people who are saying, I don't know if you agree with that or believe it or not, that mermaids and fairies and the light beings, you know what I'm saying, variety of type of sprites or light beings and stuff, they're all they live in the fourth dimension, just outside our frequency. Okay? And if you were to believe all that stuff, so basically you got third dimension, it's all us and the animals that we see, and they're fourth dimension. And by the way, even our animals in this, because I follow that very, 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 well, I shouldn't say religiously, but very, very astutely, about nature and animals. And there are animals who certainly understand the fourth dimension a lot better than we do. And their range of hearing, all frequency, hearing, some sight, smell for sure, is beyond our range, which extends into the fourth dimension. So really third and fourth dimension really is not quite one dimension because they have been classified as different dimensions, but one is the extension of the other. And they're governed by the same physical laws and the mechanics laws. Now, if you start talking about the ninth dimension, I would have to think about that. And I would have to understand the mechanics of the fifth or seventh dimension, and I don't need to know sixth, because once I know fifth, I know sixth. And once I know seventh, I know eighth. You know what I'm saying?
We don't have much more time, Mohsen. Sorry.
Yes, sir.
I have a few practical questions at the end.
Certainly.
For instance, Iran. That's a completely different topic. I know that, but since that's your origin, what is your take on what is going on around that country and the role it's playing in the Middle East?
Well, sir, we are all prisoners living in a cage. There's no question about it.
Okay.
Whether you're in the United States or you're in Biafra, it is the same thing. Only, you know what I'm saying? Only the matrix is a little different in one place than the other. We're all being fed upon energetically. I believe in that 100%. Okay? That stuff is going on in there, definitely. However, there are two things I can say regarding Iran, and I don't really want to be considered as an Iranian, although I love Iran, I love the old culture. There's so much richness and everything in there that doesn't exist in here. It's just never existed, or it's really been bastardized, you know? So, but anyway, two things I can tell you about that. One thing is that I think Persia, going back to the time of Cyrus the Great and all this stuff, they have a root in what was going on after Anunnaki. Okay?
Mm-hmm.
It was pretty much the first nation that became almost planetary. Okay? Because Iran or Persia, the old Persia, took over almost the entire globe. Okay? With the exception of some aquatic realms beyond Greece and stuff, which they were not aquatic people. They were not, they were not Navy people. You know what I'm saying? Or what do you call it? Marine. They were more, earthly. But so that is one thing. I think there's a science and technology that goes on in Iran right now by certain scientists. I can mention one of them. You've probably heard of him. And that's Mehran Tesh.
Okay.
Who is absolutely a genius. And I want to study him more and more. I haven't had time much. I have to meet him because I think we need to talk.
Yeah, I tried to get him in my show 3 times. It's very difficult. Yeah. But he wrote 3 books in English. Did you have a chance to have a look at them, or?
No, sir. I just don't have time. I wish I did. But I will. The plasma physics that he talks about.
Yes.
The whole phenomenon of flow, potential flow. It goes right along with what I believe in, what I refer to. Well, what not I refer to, but it's generally cations and anions in liquid light. Because you've got positive and you got negative ions, but they're not really polarized. They're not like looking at the battery or looking at in terms of electricity or magnetism. Okay, but there is tendency of positivity, tendency of negativity. So there would be a flow. So he talks about potential flow. I think I understand him beyond even reading him, because I know the very crux and essence of what he wants to say.
Okay, great. Yeah,
I have looked at some of his stuff, but I haven't studied him very much. But I think they have that going on in Iran.
Yeah, thank you for answering this. The time is up, unfortunately, Mohsen. What I will do is I will bring you in contact with him, and maybe some beautiful work can come out of that. For now, thank you very much for your time and sharing all the information with us. Audience, thank you very much for listening to this episode. Next week, we have Ole Demmengaard again coming to the show. He has been 2 times already a guest here. And we'll continue talking about, for instance, Operation 40. So thank you very much for this time, and hope you tune in next week. Same time, same station, findingvoicesradio.com. Thank you for now. Bye-bye.